Good afternoon, everybody. Madeline Clayton on Quora.com asked, how does the Kabbalah work? And asked for my answer to this question. I want to start off by saying that the term the Kabbalah, with a definitive article, the, I don't know if that's appropriate or not. We could argue both ways about it, but personally I think that it really doesn't belong there. The definite article, I would have questioned how does Kabbalah work, but then the question of how does it work, I don't know exactly what the question is, and maybe you can, respond a little bit, clarify exactly what you're asking. The term Kabbalah, the word Kabbalah, simply means something that's received, something that's accepted. In I think in modern Hebrew they call a receipt a Kabbalah, and colloquially you could say it means tradition. And actually, in the Talmud, usually the word divrei Kabbalah means the books of the Bible other than the Torah, meaning what we call the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim, meaning everything in the Hebrew Bible, what Protestants would call the Old Testament. The Catholic Old Testament has more books. To the Jews, that's our whole Bible, is what most Protestants would call the Old Testament. And anything that's really after Deuteronomy, meaning from Joshua on, are called divrei Kabbalah, the words of tradition, or the words that were received. I know Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, though, made the connection. I think this might be his own idea. It's a cute idea, to say that, there's something mystical about the words of the prophets, because, again, it's like prophecy is a pretty mystical idea. So in the modern parlance, the term Kabbalah generally is a catch-all term for various schools of Jewish mysticism. It's clear that these ideas are rooted in the Bible and in the Talmud. If one doesn't know the Bible and the Talmud, most of these Kabbalistic works will make no sense whatsoever. And even with knowing the Bible and the Talmud, a lot of them don't make a lot of sense, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people scoff at Kabbalah. In the Jewish community, there's a lot of people who call themselves like rationalists. I'm talking Orthodox Jews, but they consider themselves, they say, rationalists, and they say that Kabbalah should not be part of our tradition. But the fact of the matter is, it is part of the Jewish tradition. It is something that's been generally accepted. Have there been aberrations? Yes. Have there been cults that have sprung up from Kabbalah, from misinterpretations of Kabbalah? Yes. And that's a problem. But it's two different things. You don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just because there are cults that exist that base themselves on Kabbalah doesn't mean that we have to totally get rid of the Kabbalah. But again, certain people question the validity and the authenticity. But I've been taught that we accept it, and many things. So then the question is, how does it work? Well, what does it mean, how does it work? What does this question mean? Are we referring to doing supernatural, magical things? Most people who are involved in the study of Kabbalah aren't involved in those types of things. And so some scholars today, they speak of the difference between theoretical Kabbalah and practical Kabbalah. Practical Kabbalah called Kabbalah Masis. Some people might call it magical Kabbalah. So in some ways, there's the philosophical Kabbalah, and there's the practical or magical Kabbalah. I'm assuming that when you're asking about how does it work, you're probably asking about the magical or practical Kabbalah, which and then there's also meditative Kabbalah, sometimes called prophetic Kabbalah. And the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of people today who are involved in the study of Kabbalah stay away from practical Kabbalah. There are some who practice it. How does it work? I mean, essentially, everything is God, and God can do anything. And if you want to ask God to do something, it can be done. And sometimes you have to know the right formulas in things. In a sense that, I guess the way you could compare it to things that are known from science, I know the Chassam Sofer, who wasn't really known as a Kabbalist, and very rarely quoted any Kabbalistic sources, although he was familiar with them. And he hid his knowledge of Kabbalah and sometimes frowned on certain customs that the Kabbalists engaged in. But the Chassam Sofer, Rabbi Moshe Schreiber, Rabbi Moses Sofer, writes, and it's interesting that I've seen similar descriptions in traditions of other traditions, Buddhist traditions, and things like that, is that just as there are things in science that God put in the universe when He created it, but human beings were not aware of until they discovered them scientifically. You know, electromagnetic waves, which include radio waves, and microwaves, and all these different waves. These things exist, and they can operate things that someone who would have lived 500 years ago would have seen it and thought it was magic or witchcraft. And what the Chassam Sofer says is that this God revealed to us that in His creation there exists, you know, certain things that, and if you do things in a certain way, following the Kabbalah, and following the halacha rather, following the Jewish law, you can have effect on the spiritual worlds and even on the material worlds. And so, just like a radio or a computer or something, there's a level of precision that's necessary for things to operate properly. And if there's some minor damage on a computer chip, right, or in the radio equipment or television equipment, whatever it is, if there's some kind of minor damage, it affects the whole system and ruins it and makes it useless. So too, you can compare it to, in Jewish law, for example, the phylacteries, the tefillin, or the mezuzah that's put on the doorpost. And we say that you have to have, it has to be written on parchment, and if even one letter is missing or damaged, the whole thing is no good, right? And similarly, many of the magical Kabbalists will issue amulets, kameyas they're called, and it's mentioned in the Talmud that there's such a thing as a kameya. And when it comes to these types of things, if it's not done exactly the right way, it doesn't work. and whether it's matters of Jewish law, like the tefillin or the mezuzah, or matters of Kabbalah, which also relate to Jewish law. For example, the question of using a kameya, and it has to be minimumcha, it has to be from the expert, it has to be made, and it has to be tested and proven to work, and so forth. And when it comes to an amulet, and so too, so we have such things. So how exactly does it work? I'm not going to get into all the details, but for the most part, especially with halachic issues, particularly with scribal arts, it's required that it should be done in the right way for it to work. And the same thing with, and most of these things are basic aspects of Jewish law that even the rationalists engage in and believe in, and agree that it has to be done the right way and so forth. I'm talking about the Orthodox rationalists that we discussed earlier, that they too will say, the tefillin are no good if one letter is missing. The Sefer Torah is no good if one letter is missing. The mezuzah is no good if one letter is missing, and things like that. And things have to be done in a precise way. And the Kabbalists will say that these have effect on our world. So that's and like I said, I can't say exactly how it works, other than that it's something God put into creation when He created the universe. But that it can be compared to technology. And essentially, I know some rabbis who I am friendly with do indeed say that it is technology. And that's, it's basically a technology that science hasn't yet discovered yet. Science is not there yet, but it was revealed to us at Mount Sinai, and that's how we know about it. That God revealed it to us, to Moses at Mount Sinai. All right, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. All the best. And thank you for the question.